Welcome. Grab your poutine. Today we're diving into the awkward, revealing world of international friendships. When the US slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, it was a plot twist that left Canada looking for backup. You'd expect allies to rally, but instead, Canada's group chat went silent. Left on red by the world. This isn't just about trade, it's about how alliances hold up when tested by power politics. As travelers, we see how these decisions shape perceptions and relationships on the ground. So let's unpack who showed up for Canada and who ghosted them. Let's start with the UK, Canada's family. A relationship built on centuries of shared history and intertwined destinies. Centuries of shared history, a legacy etched in time. From colonial roots to modern partnerships, the ties seemed unbreakable. A monarch on the money, a symbol of unity, a shared head of state. The Queen's image, a constant reminder of the enduring connection. And a bond you'd think was unbreakable. A common language, similar values, and a deep cultural exchange fostered a sense of kinship. When the tariffs hit, you'd expect the UK to call. A friendly ear, a supportive voice, a sign of solidarity in a time of need. Instead, silence. A deafening quiet that spoke volumes. The phone remained unanswered, the diplomatic channels strangely still. The UK was deep in Brexit chaos, consumed by its own internal struggles and the monumental task of redefining its global role. Distracted and desperate for a US trade deal. A shiny new partnership beckoned, promising economic prosperity and a renewed sense of global influence. Siding with Canada would have risked their own interests, jeopardizing the potential for a lucrative agreement with a much larger economy. So they stayed quiet. A calculated decision, prioritizing economic gain over historical ties. The unspoken message was clear. Self-preservation came first. It wasn't a rejection, but a clear signal. A subtle yet unmistakable shift in the dynamics of the relationship. Priorities had shifted, the old alliances were being reassessed, and new partnerships were taking precedence. For travelers, London's maple leaf flags and shared heritage feel strong, a comforting reminder of the enduring connection between the two nations. But this moment revealed the cold pragmatism beneath. The veneer of kinship cracked, exposing the hard realities of international politics. Even the closest ties can fray when national interests are at stake. Loyalty can be a casualty of political expediency. Canada was left out of the family dinner, a stark reminder that sentimentality often takes a back seat to strategic advantage. Reminded that in politics, family is just a word, a convenient label that can be easily discarded when the stakes are high enough. The UK's silence was a quiet statement about its new reality, a new era of self-reliance and a willingness to prioritize its own interests above all else. History matters, a foundation upon which relationships are built, a shared narrative that binds nations together. But the future and trade deals matter more. The promise of economic prosperity often outweighs the bonds of tradition. The cultural connection remains, a testament to the enduring ties between the people of the two nations. But the political one cracked. The foundations of the relationship weakened, revealing the fragility of international alliances. In the end, everyone looked out for themselves, a harsh reality of the global stage where self-interest often trumps cooperation. Canada learned that alliances can be as fragile as they are historic. A valuable lesson in the ever-shifting landscape of international relations. The UK's silence wasn't just absence, it wasn't merely a lack of communication but a deliberate choice. It was a shift in priorities. A realignment of allegiances, a new direction for British foreign policy. Sometimes even family leaves you on your own. A painful truth, but one that must be acknowledged in the complex world of international politics. And in international relations, that's the rule, not the exception. A constant reminder that nations must navigate the global stage with caution and a clear understanding of their own interests. Next, France, the cultural cousin, especially to Quebec, a nation with deep historical ties and a shared language. France loves to champion the francophonie, that global network of French-speaking communities, and often positions itself to stand up to the US on the world stage. So given this, you'd expect a bold defense of Canada when it faced challenges from its southern neighbor. Instead, France was nearly silent. A surprising turn of events considering the historical alliance. The EU, including France, focused intently on their own fight with US tariffs. A battle that directly impacted their economic interests, not Canada's. Canada's plight, it seemed, was a secondary concern. Macron's priority was European unity, solidifying the bloc's position in global affairs, not a special stand for Ottawa. A dedicated defense of Canada simply wasn't on the agenda. France chose strategy over sentiment, a calculated decision based on geopolitical realities, defending the EU bloc, not the village down the road, prioritizing the larger, more impactful alliance. For travelers, the Montreal-Paris connection feels undeniably real, a tangible link between two cultures. But politics, as always, is far less romantic. Cold, calculated, and strategic. France's European identity ultimately trumped its perceived role as Canada's big brother or protector. Shared history met cold strategy, a clash between heritage and hard power, and strategy won. The pragmatic choice prevailed over any sense of obligation. The lesson? What can we learn from this diplomatic silence? Even the closest cultural ties, the deepest historical connections, can't override geopolitical priorities when push comes to shove. France's support, its allegiance, was firmly with Brussels, with the European Union project, not for Canada. Canada was, in this instance, on its own. In the end, Canada was just another bystander, an observer in a much bigger, more complex game of international relations. The romance of shared language, the allure of cultural kinship, faded quickly in the face of realpolitik and strategic calculations. And Canada was left waiting, perhaps a little naively, for a resounding Vive le Canada Libre that ultimately never came. Now let's turn our attention to Germany, the pragmatic powerhouse of Europe. A nation known for its engineering prowess, economic stability, and a no-nonsense approach to international relations. Germany's relationship with Canada is undeniably strong. Built on mutual respect and shared values, there are deep ties between the two nations. But, and this is a crucial but, their primary loyalty is always going to be to the EU, the European Union. It's a commitment etched in stone. When US tariffs hit, impacting their economic interests, Germany protested loudly. They made their displeasure very clear on the international stage. But this was primarily for itself and the EU as a whole, not specifically for Canada's sake. Their actions were driven by the need to protect their own economic sphere. Canada's struggle, unfortunately, was often relegated to a footnote in the larger geopolitical narrative. Germany's fight was, at its core, a fight for its own powerful and globally significant auto industry. The underlying logic was remarkably simple and straightforward. Defend the EU fortress at all costs, protect its borders and its economic interests. Don't complicate things with side battles or secondary concerns that could distract from the main objective. For travelers, Germany often feels open, welcoming, and remarkably orderly, a testament to its efficient systems. But beneath the surface, their priorities are always crystal clear and strategically aligned. Friendship with Canada is undoubtedly real and valued, a relationship built on years of cooperation. But the EU is existential. It's the very foundation of their economic and political identity. When threatened, Germany will invariably protect its own house first, safeguarding its own interests above all else. It wasn't personal against Canada, it was simply a matter of business and strategic calculation. Canada was in effect left standing outside the EU walls, a friendly neighbor, but not an insider. Watching the fight unfold from afar, a spectator in a game with very high stakes. Pragmatism ruled the day, guiding their decisions and shaping their actions. And solidarity, while present, ultimately had its limits when faced with matters of national and continental importance. Germany's unwavering support was primarily for the bloc, for the EU, not solely for any individual buddy or ally. In the end, as it often does in the world of international relations, business always comes first, dictating the terms of engagement. Over to Japan, the master of polite neutrality. Japan and Canada are close, but Japan's alliance with the US is vital. When the tariff fight broke out, Japan stayed silent, focused on its own negotiations. Publicly backing Canada would have risked their security relationship with Washington. Japan's strategy: solve their own problem quietly, avoid making waves. Their silence wasn't indifference, it was careful calculation. In a tough neighborhood, the US alliance comes first. For travelers, Japan's harmony and non-confrontation are cultural and political. Friendship with Canada mattered, but not enough to challenge the US. Japan's diplomatic silence was a masterclass in self-preservation. Canada was left swaying in the wind, a casualty of bigger priorities. In geopolitics, the unsaid often says it all, and Japan said nothing, very politely. Down to Australia, Canada's Commonwealth cousin. On paper, they're close shared monarch, Five Eyes, similar vibes. But when the tariffs hit, Australia was silent. Why? They were busy securing their own exemption from the US. Standing up for Canada would have risked their own deal. Australia's strategy: get a hall pass, don't rock the boat. Their silence wasn't neutrality, it was self-interest. For travelers, the camaraderie feels real, but politics is pragmatic. Australia chose alliance maintenance over solidarity. Even among friends, national interest comes first. Canada was left out in the cold while Australia got its exemption. The lesson, when push comes to shove, it's every nation for itself. Even the friendliest cousins look out for number one. Now, India, a rising power and a complex friend. The Canada-India relationship is growing but still new. When the tariffs hit, India stayed silent. They had their own trade issues with the US and bigger strategic goals. Supporting Canada would have risked their US partnership, crucial for countering China. India's foreign policy is about multi-alignment, friends with many, beholden to none. Their silence wasn't a snub, just strategic calculation. For travelers, the people-to-people ties are strong, but politics is pragmatic. India's focus was on its own rise, not Canada's fight. The political relationship is still a work in progress, guided by self-interest. Mexico, Canada's NAFTA partner in the same storm. You'd expect a united front, but both countries negotiated separately. Mexico prioritized a quick deal with the US, even if it left Canada behind. The US used divide-and-conquer tactics, weakening their leverage. Mexico's choice was pragmatic economic stability over solidarity. For travelers, North America feels interconnected, but this crisis revealed deep fault lines. Alliances are only as strong as shared interests. Mexico's separate deal left Canada isolated. In the end, it was every country for itself. Even formal partners put national interests first. China, the global heavyweight and US rival. You'd think China might support Canada to score points against the US, but at the time, Canada and China were locked in their own diplomatic crisis over the Huawei arrest. China had detained 2 Canadians in retaliation. There was no goodwill, only tension. China's silence wasn't neutrality, it was active opposition. For travelers, economic ties may seem close, but politics is a minefield. China had no reason to help Canada, only reasons to stay away. Overlapping conflicts made support impossible. Sometimes silence is just another form of conflict. Italy, G7 partner, NATO ally, and home to a big Italian-Canadian community. When the tariff drama peaked at the G7 summit, Italy was distracted by its own populist politics. The government sympathized with anti-establishment rhetoric and focused on EU battles. Instead of backing Canada, Italy played mediator, avoiding a firm stand. Their silence reflected political fragmentation and shifting priorities. For travelers, Italy's warmth is real, but politics is complicated. Populism changed their foreign policy calculus. Italy looked the other way. Another friendly face, but no support. In a chaotic world, old alliances aren't what they used to be. South Korea, economic powerhouse and key Canadian partner. Like Japan, their US alliance is non-negotiable. When tariffs hit, South Korea quickly negotiated its own exemption. No public support for Canada, just bilateral pragmatism. Their priority: national security and economic stability. For travelers, Korea feels dynamic and modern, but always aware of its precarious position. Solidarity took a back seat to survival. Canada was left waiting while Korea took the exit ramp. In the end, alliances are about hierarchy, and Canada's issue wasn't at the top. So that's our global tour, not of landmarks but of political silences. When pressure mounts, alliances reveal their true priorities. These stories aren't just about trade, they're about character and connection. As you travel, look beyond the scenery. Ask about the politics and history shaping each place. The world is messy, complicated, and fascinating. Understanding it is the greatest adventure. Thanks for watching. See you on the next journey.